Why was everyone laughing when she walked into the room? The briefing room at Forward Operating Base Viper smelled like every other war zone command center. Stale coffee, gun oil, and something else. Testosterone. The kind that fills a room when men who kill for a living gather in one place. 6 Navy SEALs sprawled across folding chairs like they owned the oxygen itself. Team Razorback, bearded, tattooed, muscles built from protein powder and controlled violence. They wore their lethality the way other men wore cologne. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat with his boots propped on the tactical map table. 6'4", the kind of man who didn't just enter rooms, he dominated them, crushed them, made them smaller by his presence alone. He was examining his fingernails when he spoke. So Intel says we're getting specialized Overwatch support. His voice carried the particular boredom of someone who'd seen it all before, probably some drone operator with soft hands who's never seen actual combat. Derek "Hound" Williams laughed, the heavy gunner. He was sharpening his knife against a whetstone and the sound was deliberate, theatrical, scrape, scrape, scrape. I heard it's some specialist from Benying, he said. Probably can't even carry their own ruck. They were still laughing when the door opened. Then the laughter died. Died like someone had cut its throat. A figure stood in the doorway, so slight she barely cast a shadow under the flickering fluorescent lights. 4'9" in her combat boots, maybe 95 pounds soaking wet. Her multicam uniform was tailored, but it still looked like it was wearing her instead of the other way around. On her back rested a pelican case, nearly as tall as she was. It leaned against the doorframe like a monument to something they didn't understand yet. Morrison's boots hit the floor. Thud. He squinted past her, looking for the real specialist, the actual operator. Then his gaze dropped and dropped again until it met hers. "You've got to be kidding me." The words came out half laugh, half exhale, cold and sharp. "Did you take a wrong turn? The admin office is 2 buildings over." She didn't flinch. She walked into the room with measured steps. Her boots made a distinct rhythmic sound on the plywood floor. Thud, thud, thud. She dragged the massive pelican case behind her, wheels rumbling like distant thunder across the uneven boards. She stopped at the front of the room, snapped a salute that could cut glass, stood at parade rest. Chief Warrant Officer 3 Emery reporting for attachment. Her voice was low, stripped of tremors. It wasn't a shout, but it carried to the back of the room with the density of a bullet. Morrison stood slowly, towering over her by nearly 2 feet. He walked a full circle around her, inspecting her like one would inspect a defective parachute. His eyes tracked from her boots to her face, measuring, calculating, dismissing. "Sparrow," he gestured to his team with a theatrical wave. "Gentlemen, meet our Overwatch. Hope you packed juice boxes because it looks like we're taking a field trip to daycare." The room erupted. Hound's laughter was loudest, a braying sound that filled every corner. Tyler "Viper" McKenzie, the youngest at 26, just shook his head in disbelief. Even Doc Patterson, who had 2 daughters back home, looked uncomfortable, like he knew this was wrong but didn't have the words to stop it. "Hey, Sparrow," Hound called out, not even trying to hide his grin. "You need a step stool to see over that rifle case." Emma ignored him completely. She kept her eyes locked on Morrison. Her posture parade ground perfect despite the weight of the case she just dragged across the room. "I'm qualified on all platforms, Commander," she said. "Matter of fact, clinical. I'm here to provide long-range interdiction and reconnaissance for Operation Blindfold." Morrison's smile vanished. He leaned down, invading her personal space, his breath hot against her forehead. "Listen to me, Chief. This isn't a shooting range in Virginia. We're going up into the Hindu Kush. Altitude's 10,000 feet. The terrain is vertical. My guys carry 80 pounds of gear." He paused for effect. "You weigh what?" 95, sir." 95. Morrison repeated the number like it was a punchline. "Your rifle weighs 30. Your ammo weighs 20. You are a liability. If you lag behind, I will leave you. If you compromise my team, I will cut you loose." His eyes bored into hers, searching for the crack, the moment when she would break. "Do we understand each other?" Emma looked up. The angle hurt her neck, but she didn't break eye contact. In his eyes, she saw what she'd seen in every commanding officer's eyes for the last decade. Fear that she was weak, anger that he had to deal with it, the assumption that size meant incapacity, that her presence was a political statement rather than a tactical asset. "I understand, sir," her voice steady. Then she gestured to the map on the wall behind him. "But you should check your intel on the exfil route." Morrison paused. The room went dead silent. "Excuse me." Emma walked past him to the map, her boots clicking softly on the floor. She traced a finger along the marked extraction route. "You're planning a low-level extraction through the Shalin Pass at 1400 hours tomorrow." Her voice shifted, became clinical, surgical. "Meteorological data from the agricultural weather stations shows a thermal inversion building in the valley. High pressure meeting cold air from the peaks." Morrison crossed his arms. "We checked the weather, it's clear." "It's clear now," Emma corrected him, her finger still on the map. "But by 1400, the wind shear in that pass will exceed 50 knots, with updrafts capable of grounding a Blackhawk. The inversion will create a ceiling at 9,000 feet. Your current flight plan has you transiting at 8,500. She turned to face him. "If you take that route, you won't be flying out. You'll be walking into a kill box with a high-value target and no air support." The silence stretched across the room like razor wire. Morrison looked at the map, then at his communications officer, Ryan "Ghost" Sullivan. Ghost shrugged, looking distinctly uneasy as he pulled up weather data on his tablet. Ghost tapped the screen several times. "She's right, sir. NOAA data confirms thermal inversion probability at 87% between 1300 and 1600 hours. Wind conditions in the pass will be hazardous to aviation." Morrison's jaw tightened. Emma watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. Admit she was right, or double down on his authority. "If we're walking," Emma continued, her voice matter-of-fact, "I suggest you worry less about my pack weight and more about the fact that your current loadout for the saw gunner is too heavy for a rapid ascent on the alternate route." She pointed at Hound. "He's carrying 200 rounds of 7.62 belt-fed. That's 30 pounds before weapon. At altitude, in a tactical ascent, carrying wounded, he'll bonk at 7,000 feet. You'll need to redistribute ammunition across the team or cache some at waypoints." Morrison stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. The mockery was gone from his face, replaced by something harder to read. Irritation, certainly, but also a grudging, unwilling calculation. He hated being corrected. He especially hated being corrected by someone he could pick up with one hand. "Sit down, Roar," Morrison grunted, turning his back to her. "Don't speak unless spoken to." Emma didn't sit. She moved to the back of the room, finding a corner in the shadows. She sat on her pelican case, resting her hands on her knees, and watched them. They joked, they postured, their confidence filled the room like smoke, thick and choking. They didn't know yet. They didn't know that in 36 hours, in screaming wind and blinding sand, they would be praying to the girl they mocked to save their lives. Emma closed her eyes and began to count her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Inside that case was the Macmillan TAC-50, a beast of a weapon that had broken shoulders and spirits. It was a rifle built for giants, but she had learned to make it sing. 4, 5, 6. But there was something else in that case, something they would never see, something that had nothing to do with ballistics or physics. A leather journal, 70 years old, pages brittle with age and filled with handwritten notes in fatting ink. Her grandfather's journal. A man she had never met. A man who had taught himself to shoot because nobody would teach him, who had written down everything he learned, every wind calculation, every atmospheric condition, every trick for reading terrain that computers couldn't see. Sandstorm Thomas Rohr, dead since 2003, but his voice still spoke to her every time she opened that journal. When the numbers fail, he had written on page 47, listen to what the mountain is telling you. She had no idea, yet how literally she would need to follow that advice. 789. The door opened again. An older man entered, and the entire energy of the room shifted. He wasn't in uniform. He wore civilian contractor ACU pants and a faded tan shirt. But he carried himself with the kind of authority that doesn't come from rank. It comes from surviving things that kill other men. Colonel James Brennan was 64 years old. His face was weathered like old leather left too long in the sun. Gray stubble covered his jaw, but his eyes were sharp, predatory. The eyes of a man who had looked through rifle scopes at human faces and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Morrison straightened immediately. "Colonel." Brennan nodded. His gaze swept the room, took in the seals, the map, then landed on Emma in the corner. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those eyes. Recognition, maybe, or memory. "Gentlemen," his voice was gravel and whiskey. "Operation Blindfold is a go. Wheels up at 0300. Target is Khalid Zarif. High-value target. Taliban commander responsible for the Jalalabad marketplace bombing that killed 32 civilians, including a dozen children." He tapped the map. "He's holed up in a compound here. Elevation 9,200 feet. Accessible only by a single goat trail. The compound sits on a ridgeline with 360-degree observation. Approach from any direction, and you're visible for 2 kilometers. Morrison leaned forward. "Sir, if the weather forces us to walk out." "Then you walk." Brennan's tone allowed no argument. "Zarif is meeting with 2 other cell commanders tomorrow. We take him now or we lose him for 6 months, maybe forever." He looked directly at Emma. "Chief Rohr, you'll establish overwatch position here." He pointed to a rocky outcrop on the map. "Elevation 10,000 feet. Distance to target approximately 3,000 meters. Your job is to keep my boys alive while they extract the package." "Understood, sir." Brennan studied her for a moment. "Your grandfather was Sandstorm Rohr." Emma's breath caught. "Yes, sir. I knew him briefly. Vietnam, 68. He saved my platoon at Khe Sanh. 17 confirmed kills in 48 hours. Never saw anything like it before or since." Brennan's voice softened just slightly. "He told me once that shooting wasn't about strength. It was about listening, about patience, about making yourself part of the landscape until the moment demanded otherwise." "He wrote that in his journal, sir." "I know, I was there when he wrote it." Brennan turned back to Morrison. "Commander, Chief Rohr is the best long-range shooter in the United States military. She's here because I requested her specifically. You will treat her as you would treat any other member of this team, with respect, with trust, and with the understanding that your life may depend on her skill. Are we clear?" Morrison's jaw worked. "Crystal, sir." "Good." Brennan looked around the room. "Get some rest, you'll need it." He walked out. The silence he left behind was different, heavier. Morrison looked at Emma, really looked at her this time, not at her size, but at the fact that a man like Brennan, a legend, had spoken her name with something close to reverence. "Rohr." Morrison's voice was different now, still skeptical but with an edge of grudging curiosity. "You really think you can make a 3,000-meter shot?" Emma stood. "I know I can, sir. The question is whether I'll need to." She picked up her Pelican case, dragged it toward the door. The wheels rumbled across the floor. Everyone watched her leave. In the darkness outside, Emma found a quiet corner behind the barracks. She opened the case. The Macmillan TAC-50 gleamed under the moonlight, .50 caliber, bolt action, capable of punching through engine blocks at 2 miles. Beside it, wrapped in oilcloth, was the journal. She opened it carefully. The leather cover was soft with age. Inside, her grandfather's handwriting covered every page, tight, precise. The handwriting of a man who knew his time was limited and his knowledge too valuable to die with him. Page 1 to whoever reads this. I was not allowed to teach, so I taught myself, and now I teach you. Emma had read these words 1,000 times, but tonight they felt different, heavier, like a promise she was about to be asked to keep. She turned to page 47. When the numbers fail, listen to what the mountain is telling you. Wind is not constant. It rises, falls, spirals, dies. Trust your body. Trust what you feel. The mountain will speak if you're patient enough to listen. Below that, a sketch, a ridgeline, wind patterns marked with arrows, and a note in the margin. Thermal inversions create false wind reads at altitude. Always verify with natural indicators. Emma traced the words with her finger. Tomorrow, she would be alone on a mountain, responsible for 7 lives, facing an enemy that wouldn't hesitate to kill her. And the only thing between success and catastrophe would be her ability to do what these men thought impossible. She closed the journal, wrapped it carefully, placed it back in the case beside the rifle. Then she lay down on the hard ground and stared at the stars. Sleep didn't come. It never did before a mission. Instead, she counted heartbeats and listened to the wind and waited for the mountain to start speaking. What does a 3,000-meter shot feel like when you're the one taking it? The Chinook's rotors beat the darkness into submission. Emma sat in the cargo bay, surrounded by giants. Morrison and his team were checking weapons, adjusting gear, their movements economical and practiced. They'd done this 100 times. She'd done it 23. But never like this. Never with this much distance, this much altitude, this much doubt surrounding her like a physical presence. Hound sat across from her, his saw resting between his knees. He'd redistributed his ammo like she'd suggested, but he hadn't thanked her for it, hadn't acknowledged it at all. He just stared at her with flat, unreadable eyes. The loadmaster shouted over the noise, 5 minutes. Emma checked her gear for the 15th time. The TAC-50 was secured in its case. Her pack held 70 pounds of ammunition, water, spotting scope, range finder, and her grandfather's journal wrapped in waterproof plastic. Her body weight plus pack weight equaled 165 pounds. She'd carried heavier in training, but never at this altitude, never with this much at stake. The Chinook banked hard. Her stomach lurched. Through the small window, she could see the mountains rising like black teeth against the starlit sky. The Hindu Kush, beautiful and merciless. The kind of terrain that killed the unprepared without malice or memory. Morrison leaned over, had to shout directly into her ear. Overwatch position is a half-click straight up from the LZ. Can you make it? Yes, sir. If you can't, tell me now. I'll leave Doc with you too. I'll make it, sir. Morrison studied her face, looking for cracks again. But Emma had learned long ago how to show him nothing, how to make her face a wall of calm certainty even when her heart was hammering against her ribs like it wanted to escape. He nodded, pulled back. The Chinook flared, touched down. The ramp dropped and cold mountain air rushed in like a living thing. Thin, knife-sharp. Emma sucked in a breath and felt her lungs protest immediately. 10,000 feet. Her body screaming at her that there wasn't enough oxygen, that this was wrong, that humans weren't meant to exist at this altitude. She ignored it. Grabbed her pack, slung the rifle case over her shoulder, stepped out onto Afghan soil. The team was already moving, 7 shadows melting into the landscape. Morrison looked back once. A silent question. Emma raised one hand. I'm good. Go. They disappeared. And she was alone. Alone with the mountain, with the darkness, With the thin air and the weight on her back and the knowledge that 7 men she barely knew were depending on her to do something most trained snipers said was impossible. She checked her watch, 03:20. She had 40 minutes to reach her position, set up, range the target area, be ready when Morrison's team made contact. 40 minutes. She started climbing. The terrain was worse than the map suggested. Rocky, unstable, every step required calculation. Where to place her boot, how much weight to trust to each foothold. The pack pulled at her shoulders. The rifle case banged against her hip. Her breathing came in sharp gasps as her body tried desperately to extract oxygen from air that had almost none to give. 15 minutes in, her legs started to burn. 20 minutes in, the burn became fire. At 25 minutes, she wanted to stop, to rest, just for a moment, just long enough to catch her breath. But she didn't. Because Morrison was counting on her, and Brennan, and her grandfather who'd learned to shoot because nobody would teach him, who'd written his knowledge down so that someday someone like her could use it. She couldn't stop. So she didn't. At 38 minutes, she reached the overwatch position. A rocky outcrop, just like Brennan had described, flat enough to shoot from, high enough to dominate the target area, protected on 3 sides by boulders that would hide her silhouette. She dropped the pack, her shoulders screamed in relief. She opened the rifle case with shaking hands, drew out the TAC-50. The weight of it was familiar, comforting. This was something she understood, something she controlled. She set up quickly, bipod extended, scope covers removed, bolt checked, magazine loaded with 5 rounds of 50 caliber match-grade ammunition. Each round cost $30, each one capable of killing a man at distances most people couldn't even see. She pressed her eye to the scope, scanned the valley below. There, the compound, exactly where intelligence said it would be. A cluster of mud brick buildings perched on a ridgeline like a hawk's nest, 3 stories, flat roofs, perfect sight lines in every direction. Emma ranged it, 3,014 meters. She felt her heart sink. 3,000 meters was already at the edge of human capability. 14 extra meters might as well be a mile. At that distance, every variable multiplied. Wind, temperature, barometric pressure, the Earth's rotation. Even the difference between shooting east versus west mattered because of the Coriolis effect. And she'd have to calculate all of it, factor all of it, compensate for all of it. With her body screaming for oxygen, her hands still shaking from the climb, and a ticking clock that said Morrison's team would be in position in 17 minutes. She pulled out her range finder, her notepad, her grandfather's journal. Then she started calculating. Wind speed at her position, 4 knots from the northeast, but that was here, at 10,000 feet. The target was 9,200 feet, 800 feet lower, different air pressure, different wind conditions. She glassed the valley, looking for indicators, a flutter of fabric on a clothesline, dust patterns, the movement of smoke from a cooking fire. Wind at target elevation, 6 knots, no, 7 shifting, inconsistent. She wrote down numbers, drew diagrams, calculated bullet drop, time of flight. The 50 caliber round would take 6.3 seconds to reach the target. In that time, the wind could shift, the target could move, everything could change. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from cold and altitude and the knowledge that she was attempting something that the math said shouldn't work. She opened her grandfather's journal, flipped to page 47. When the numbers fail, listen to what the mountain is telling you. Emma closed her eyes. Listened. The wind spoke first, not steady, not constant. It rose and fell in patterns, rhythmic like breathing, the mountain's breathing. She felt it against her face, cold on the left, warmer on the right. A thermal gradient, air rising from the valley below, creating updrafts, eddies, chaos. She opened her eyes, looked at her calculations. They were good, professional, exactly what any sniper school would teach. And they were wrong. Because the math assumed constant conditions, but nothing about this mountain was constant. The air moved, shifted, danced, and she needed to account for that, needed to feel it, needed to become part of it. She set down her notepad, pressed her cheek to the stock of the rifle, and stopped calculating, started feeling. The radio crackled in her ear, Morrison's voice, flat, tense. Overwatch, this is actual, we're in position, standing by for your confirmation. Emma keyed her mic. Actual Overwatch, I have eyes on target compound. 3 guards visible, north wall, east gate, rooftop. Copy, we move in 12 minutes. Confirm you can engage if required. Emma hesitated. She could lie, tell him yes, tell him she was ready. But Morrison deserved the truth. Actual conditions are unfavorable. Wind is variable. I have solution at current range, but confidence is low. Silence on the radio. Then Morrison's voice softer. Overwatch, yes or no. Can you make the shot if we need it? Emma looked through the scope. 3,014 meters. Wind shifting. Target compound barely visible in the darkness. Every instructor she'd ever had said it was impossible. Every manual said the conditions were too unpredictable. But her grandfather's voice was in her head. When the numbers fail, listen to what the mountain is telling you. She took a breath. Actual, if you need it, I'll make it. Good enough, actual out. The radio went silent. Emma settled behind the rifle and waited for the mountain to tell her what came next. How do you stay calm when everything is about to go wrong? Morrison's team moved through the darkness like water through cracks, silent, fluid, inevitable. Emma watched them through her scope, 7 shadows approaching the compound, each man carrying enough firepower to level a small building, each one trusting that if things went sideways, the 4'9" woman on the mountain would save them. No pressure. She scanned the compound again, 3 guards visible, one on the north wall smoking, one at the east gate leaning against the doorframe like he was asleep standing up, one on the rooftop packing, bored, probably cold, definitely not expecting what was about to happen. Emma's radio crackled. Overwatch actual 2 minutes. Copy. She checked her dial-ups. Wind had shifted slightly, now 7 knots from the northeast. She adjusted her scope. 1 click right, 2 clicks up. The math was clean, professional, but she knew it was wrong, because the mountain was still breathing, the air still moving in patterns that numbers couldn't capture. She pressed her cheek to the stock, felt the wind against her face, waited. 60 seconds. The guard on the rooftop stopped packing, looked south, toward where Morrison's team was approaching. Had he heard something, seen something? Emma's finger moved to the trigger, not touching, just resting nearby, ready. 45 seconds. The guard took 2 steps toward the southern wall, peering into the darkness. His hand moved to his radio. 30 seconds. Overwatch actual, we've been spotted. Guard on rooftop is calling it in. I need him down, now. Emma's world contracted. Everything disappeared except the reticle in her scope, the guard's center mass, the wind on her face, the mountain's breath. Overwatch, did you copy? I need that guard down right now. 3,014 meters, wind 7 knots, target moving, time of flight 6.3 seconds. In that time he could move, could get to cover, could alert the entire compound. She had 1 shot. Overwatch, I'm giving the order, take the shot. Emma exhaled slowly, let half the breath out, held it. Her heart was beating too fast, 80 beats per minute. She needed it slower, needed to time the shot between heartbeats, between breaths, in that tiny space where her body was absolutely still. The guard raised his radio to his mouth. Emma stopped thinking. She became the mountain, became the wind, became the space between heartbeats, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared. The recoil was catastrophic. The TAC-50 was a monster, 50 caliber, designed to punch through engine blocks. The force slammed into her shoulder like a car crash. Pain exploded through her collarbone. Her entire upper body jerked backward. She didn't care. She was already on the bolt, cycling it, chambering another round, her eye returning to the scope. 6.3 seconds, the longest seconds of her life. The bullet flew through the darkness, invisible, silent, crossing 3,000 meters at 2,800 feet per second, dropping 43 feet from the bore line, drifting 3 feet east in the wind, spinning, stabilized by the rifling, a perfect marriage of physics and violence. The guard's head snapped back. He dropped like someone had cut his strings, just collapsed, disappeared from view behind the rooftop wall. "Confirmed," Emma whispered into her radio. "Target down." "Holy shit," someone breathed on the team net. "Did she just—" "Shut up," Morrison snapped. "Move, move." The team surged forward, breaching the east gate with explosive charges that turned night into day for 3 seconds. Then they were inside, controlled chaos, rooms cleared, targets engaged. Emma tracked them through her scope, watching, waiting, looking for threats. Another guard appeared, second-floor window, AK-47 raised, aiming down at Morrison's team. Emma didn't wait for orders. She adjusted her aim, one click left, squeezed. The rifle roared again. The recoil nearly knocked her off her position. She ignored the pain, cycled the bolt, returned to the scope. The guard in the window was gone, just gone. The 50 caliber round had punched through the mud brick wall like it wasn't even there, through the guard, through the opposite wall, probably traveling for another kilometer before finally hitting the ground. "Second target down," Emma reported. Her voice was steady, clinical, but inside she was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the impossible reality that she just made 2 shots that shouldn't exist. "Copy, Overwatch. We're consolidating on the HVT. Stand by." Emma scanned, looking for more threats. The compound was chaos now, lights flickering, men running, some armed, some not. She tracked each one, calculated ranges, prepared solutions, but held fire. Morrison's team was too close, too much chance of fratricide. Then she saw it. A technical truck, Toyota Hilux with a mounted machine gun. It burst from a hidden garage on the compound's west side. The machine gun was manned, swiveling, looking for targets. "Actual, you have a technical, west side. He's got a 50 cal mounted and he's looking for you. Can you engage?" Emma ranged it, 3,200 meters. The truck was moving, 20 miles per hour, heading toward the compound, toward Morrison's team. Moving target, increased distance, wind still variable. The shot was impossible. "Overwatch, can you engage?" Emma calculated, time of flight, wind drift, target motion. The truck would travel approximately 100 feet in the time the bullet was in flight. She needed to lead it, aim at where it would be, not where it was. But the wind was shifting, she could feel it. The mountain's breath changing, growing stronger, gusting. "Overwatch." Emma stopped calculating, stopped thinking, just felt the wind, felt the mountain, felt her grandfather's words in her bones. "When the numbers fail, listen." She adjusted her aim, leading the truck by 40 feet, accounting for wind drift, accounting for something she couldn't explain, some sense of where the bullet needed to go that had nothing to do with mathematics. And fired. The recoil drove her back. She fought it, stayed on target, watching. 6.8 seconds. The truck kept moving. The gunner was swiveling his weapon, acquiring targets, about to open fire. Then the truck's engine exploded. Literally exploded. The 50 caliber round had punched through the engine block, penetrated the oil pan. Something critical failed. The entire front end erupted in flames and smoke. The truck swerved, crashed into a wall. The gunner was thrown clear. Technical neutralized, Emma reported. Her voice was shaking now, she couldn't help it. 3 for 3. But something was wrong. She could feel it. The wind had changed, shifted direction entirely, from northeast to southwest. The thermal inversion Brennan had warned about, it was starting, and with it came something else. Dust. At first just a haze, then thicker, building. The entire valley below was turning brown, a wall of dust rising like a living thing, moving toward her, toward the compound. Actual, you've got a haboob incoming. Visibility is about to go to 0. Copy, we're securing the HVT now, 2 minutes. Emma watched the dust wall approach. It was massive, hundreds of feet tall, moving fast. When it hit, she'd be blind. Morrison's team would be blind, and anyone left in that compound who wanted them dead would have perfect cover to make it happen. She keyed her mic. Actual, recommend immediate exfil. That storm is going to swallow you. We're moving as fast as we can, Overwatch. HVT is secured, but we've got company. Multiple fighters converging on our position from the village below. At least 20, probably more. Emma swung her scope south. There, a convoy of vehicles, Hilux trucks packed with men, armed, moving toward the compound. They'd heard the explosions, seen the flames, they were coming to help. Or to kill anyone left alive. Actual, you've got a convoy, 6 vehicles. I count 25 to 30 fighters. ETA to your position, 4 minutes. Can you slow them down? Emma looked at the approaching dust storm, looked at the convoy, did the math. 4 minutes until they reached Morrison, 2 minutes until the dust storm reached her. After that, she'd be shooting blind. Maybe she could get 1 truck, maybe 2, but there were 6, and once the dust hit, she'd be useless. Unless she did something that every manual said never to do. Unless she ignored the scope and aimed by feel alone. Overwatch. Emma made a decision. Actual, I can slow them, but once that storm hits, I'm going dark. You need to be mobile before then. Copy, do what you can. Emma settled behind the rifle. The convoy was 3,800 meters away, moving fast, spread out. 6 targets, 2 minutes of visibility remaining. She picked the lead truck, ranged it, adjusted for wind, adjusted for movement, and fired. The bullet hit low, punched through the front grille. The truck kept moving, but smoke billowed from under the hood. The driver was slowing, pulling over. 1 down. She cycled the bolt, picked the second truck, fired. This time she aimed for the windshield. The glass exploded. The truck swerved, crashed into a ditch. 2 down. The dust wall was closer now, maybe 90 seconds. Third truck, she adjusted her aim, fired. The bullet caught the driver's side door. The truck kept moving. She'd missed the engine. She cycled the bolt. The dust was swallowing the valley. 45 seconds. Fourth truck, she aimed, fired. The engine block exploded. The truck died instantly. 3 down, 3 to go, but the dust was here. It hit her position like a physical force. Suddenly she couldn't see 20 feet. The compound disappeared. The convoy disappeared. Everything was brown, churning. The wind screamed. Sand peppered her face, got into her eyes, her mouth, her nose. She was blind. And Morrison's team was still in that compound, still trying to extract, with 20-plus fighters converging on their position, and no Overwatch. Emma pulled back from the scope. It was useless now. She couldn't see anything, couldn't track anything. The radio crackled, Morrison's voice barely audible through the static. Overwatch, convoy is still, 3 trucks, closing fast, need help. Emma stared at the wall of dust. She could hear her grandfather's voice, clear as day. When the numbers fail, listen to what the mountain is telling you. But what was the mountain saying when you couldn't see, when you couldn't hear, when the entire world was chaos and noise? She didn't know, but she had to try. Because 7 men were about to die, and she was the only thing standing between them and that outcome. So Emma closed her eyes. pressed her cheek to the rifle stock, and started listening to things that maybe didn't make sense, but were the only things she had left. What does it mean to shoot blind? The dust was absolute. Emma couldn't see her hand in front of her face, couldn't see the scope, couldn't see anything except brown, swirling chaos. The wind shrieked across the rocks. Sand blasted her skin like liquid fire. Her eyes watered, her throat closed. The mountain was screaming, and somewhere in that screaming was Morrison's team. Running, fighting, dying maybe. She had to do something. But what? How do you shoot what you can't see? The radio crackled again. Morrison's voice, strained, desperate. Overwatch taking fire, convoy closing, 30 seconds. 30 seconds, then they'd be overrun. Emma yanked open her pack, pulled out her grandfather's journal. The pages whipped in the wind. She held them down with her hand, flipped through desperately, looking for something, anything, some piece of wisdom that could help. Page 63, a sketch. A mountain valley, wind patterns marked in ink, and beside it handwriting, her grandfather's words. In zero visibility, trust sound. Muzzle reports carry differently based on distance and terrain. A rifle at 3000 m has a 9-second delay between muzzle flash and sound arrival. Use this. Build a map in your mind. Shoot where the sound says they'll be. 9-second delay. Sound traveling at 1100 feet per second, while the bullet traveled at 2800 feet per second. Emma's mind raced. If she heard a muzzle report, she could calculate backwards, figure out where the shot came from, where the shooter was, aim at that position. But the target would be moving. She'd need to predict, compensate, shoot at where they would be by the time the bullet arrived. It was insane, impossible. Shooting blind based on sound alone was something nobody did. Nobody tried because it was pure guesswork, pure prayer. But it was all she had. Emma pressed her ear to the rock, listening, filtering out the wind, the sand, the chaos, listening for the distinct crack of a rifle. There 3 shots, rapid fire, AK pattern. The sound came from her left, below, maybe 3,000 meters, maybe more. She swung the rifle toward the sound, but couldn't verify, couldn't see, had to trust the sound alone. Another burst, 5 rounds, same general area but slightly different pitch, different distance, 2 shooters, maybe 3. Emma's mind built a picture, a map made of sound, shapes in the darkness. The convoy had spread out, flanking Morrison's team, trying to encircle them. She aimed at where she thought the first shooter was, added lead for movement, added compensation for wind she could feel but not measure, and fired into the dust. The rifle roared, the recoil crushed her shoulder, pain flooded her arm, but she cycled the bolt, chambered another round, aimed at the second sound, fired again. She had no idea if she'd hit anything, no way to confirm, no way to know if she was helping or just wasting ammunition. The radio crackled. Overwatch, how did you, that truck just, engine exploded. How did you see that? Emma keyed her mic, her voice was raw. I didn't see it, I heard it, keep moving, I'll keep them off you. She listened again, more gunfire, closer now, 2,500 meters maybe. The convoy was pushing forward. Morrison's team was retreating, being driven back, compressed. Emma adjusted, fired, cycled, fired again. Each shot a guess, each one a prayer to mathematics and her grandfather's ghost. Then something changed. The wind, it was shifting. She could feel it on her face, the direction changing from southwest to north, straight north, strong, steady. The thermal inversion was breaking. The haboob was collapsing. And that meant the dust would clear, soon, minutes maybe. Emma pulled out her notepad, started calculating. If the wind was shifting north at 20 knots and the dust was clearing from south to north, then visibility would return from her position first. She'd have maybe 60 seconds of clear sight before the dust reached the convoy's position. 60 seconds where she could see them, but they couldn't see her. 60 seconds to end this. She waited, counting heartbeats, feeling the wind. The dust around her was thinning, still thick, still blinding, but less so. Shafts of moonlight breaking through, shapes forming in the chaos. Then suddenly she could see. 50 meters, 100, 200, the valley materializing like a photograph in developer fluid. There, the compound. Morrison's team was on the move. 7 figures running. Low, fast, dragging a hooded prisoner between them, heading east toward the exfil point. And behind them, the convoy, 3 trucks, men dismounted, advancing in a loose skirmish line, 20 fighters, maybe 25, AK-47s, RPGs, one man carrying a PKM machine gun. Emma ranged the closest fighter, 2,800 meters, moving fast. She had maybe 40 seconds before the dust cleared enough for them to see Morrison's team. 40 seconds to kill enough of them to break their momentum, to buy Morrison time to escape. She picked the man with the PKM. He was the biggest threat. If he got that machine gun into action, Morrison's team would be cut to pieces. Emma adjusted her aim, accounted for wind, for distance, for movement, and fired. The 50 caliber round hit him center mass. He disintegrated, just vanished in a spray of red mist. The PKM tumbled to the ground. She cycled the bolt, picked another target, fired, another fighter down. The convoy was confused now, men diving for cover, looking around wildly. They'd heard the shots but couldn't see where they were coming from, couldn't locate the shooter, were trying to figure out if they were being hit by airstrikes or artillery. Emma kept firing, target, adjust, fire, cycle, target, adjust, fire, cycle. Her shoulder was screaming. Each recoil felt like someone hitting her with a baseball bat. Blood was seeping through her flight suit. She'd either torn her rotator cuff or fractured her collarbone, maybe both. She didn't care, she kept shooting. 6 fighters down, 7, 8. The convoy broke. Men were running, retreating, diving into trucks and speeding away. The attack collapsed like a house of cards. 25 men rooted by a woman they couldn't see, shooting from a position they couldn't locate, with a weapon that sounded like the hand of God. Emma slumped behind the rifle. Her entire body was shaking. The pain in her shoulder was unbearable. She wanted to vomit, wanted to pass out, wanted to do anything except keep shooting. But she stayed on the rifle, watching, waiting, making sure they didn't regroup. The radio crackled, Morrison's voice, shaking. "Overwatch, what the hell was that? How many did you get?" Emma tried to speak. Her throat was raw. 8 confirmed, maybe 9. Convoy is retreating. You're clear to the exfil point. Copy, we're Oscar Mike. Helicopter inbound, ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes? She just had to hold for 6 more minutes. But something was wrong. Her vision was swimming, the edges going dark. Her hands were numb. The rifle felt impossibly heavy. Altitude sickness, combined with exhaustion, pain, dehydration, her body was shutting down, going into shock. She blinked, tried to focus. The valley was spinning. Overwatch, confirm you copy. Helicopter inbound. Emma keyed her mic, tried to speak. Her voice came out as a whisper. Copy, I copy. Are you okay? You don't sound good. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She was dying. Not dramatically, not from gunshot wounds or explosions, but from the simple reality that her body had been pushed past its limits, that the mountain had taken everything she had, and now it was taking more. She slumped against the rocks, the rifle sliding away. She tried to grab it, couldn't. Her hands wouldn't respond. Everything was going dark. The radio crackled again. Overwatch, we're at the LZ. Helicopter is landing. Are you mobile? Emma tried to answer, couldn't. Her throat had closed. Her vision was almost gone. She was dimly aware of shapes moving in the valley. Morrison's team loading onto the helicopter. Safe. Mission complete. She'd done it, kept them alive, made the impossible shots, saved them. And now she was going to die on this mountain, alone, because she'd given everything, and there was nothing left. She closed her eyes, accepting it, At least she died doing what her grandfather had taught her. At least the journal would survive. Someone would find it, learn from it, carry on the legacy. That was enough. Had to be enough. Then she heard rotors, close, too close. The helicopter was climbing, banking, coming toward her. Why? They had the HVT. The mission was complete. They should be gone. The sound grew louder, deafening. She opened her eyes, saw rotor wash blasting dust in every direction, saw the Chinook hovering impossibly close to the cliff face, saw the ramp drop, saw Morrison's massive silhouette in the doorway, saw him jump, land hard, start running toward her. He reached her in seconds, dropped to one knee. His face was grim. "Can you move?" Emma tried to shake her head, couldn't even do that. Morrison didn't hesitate. He scooped her up like she weighed nothing, grabbed the TAC-50 with his other hand, and ran, carrying her, carrying the rifle, covering 30 meters in seconds. He reached the helicopter, practically threw her onto the deck, climbed in after her, pounded the bulkhead. Go, go, go. The Chinook lifted, banking hard, rotors screaming, pulling away from the mountain. Emma lay on the deck, staring at the ceiling, unable to move, unable to speak. 7 giants standing over her, looking down, their faces showing something she'd never seen before. Not doubt, not mockery, not dismissal. Respect, awe, maybe even fear. Doc Patterson knelt beside her, started checking her vitals. "She's in shock, possible hypothermia, shoulder looks bad, I need fluids, warming blankets, now." Emma closed her eyes, listening to their voices, feeling the helicopter carrying her away from the mountain, away from the dust, away from the place where she'd become something she never thought possible. A legend, built from mathematics and will and her grandfather's words, forged in dust and blood and impossible shots. 4'9", 95 pounds, and the deadliest thing in Afghanistan. How do you prove you were right when nobody believed you could be? The medical bay at Bagram Airfield smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. Emma lay in a cot, her right arm immobilized in a sling, torn rotator cuff, fractured scapula. The doctor had told her she'd been hours from going into shock-induced cardiac arrest on that mountain, that if Morrison hadn't come back for her, she'd be dead. But she wasn't dead. She was here, alive, and according to the nurse who'd brought her breakfast, she'd become a legend overnight. She didn't feel legendary. She felt exhausted and sore and confused. The door opened. Colonel Brennan walked in. Behind him, Morrison and his entire team. They'd cleaned up, shaved, changed into fresh uniforms, but they still carried the weight of the mountain in their eyes, the knowledge of what they'd survived. Brennan pulled up a chair, sat down beside her cot. "How you feeling, Chief?" "Like I got hit by a truck, sir." "That's about what you look like," he smiled, but it wasn't mocking, it was almost paternal. "I need to ask you some questions for the after-action report. Are you up for it?" "Yes, sir." Brennan pulled out a notepad. "Commander Morrison claims you engaged multiple targets at ranges exceeding 3,000 meters, in a sandstorm, with winds gusting to 50 knots, with zero visibility for portions of the engagement." He looked at her over the notepad. "That's impossible. You know that, right?" Emma met his eyes. "I was there, sir, it happened." How do you make shots like that when every manual says it can't be done?" Emma gestured to her pack in the corner. "My journal, it's in there." Morrison retrieved it, handed it to Brennan. The colonel opened it carefully. His eyes widened as he flipped through pages, saw the handwriting, the calculations, the sketches. "This is your grandfather's?" "Yes, sir, he taught himself, wrote down everything he learned. I learned from him, from his words, from his understanding of wind and terrain and things that computers can't measure." Brennan kept reading, his expression changing. He wrote about shooting in zero visibility, using sound to calculate target positions. "That's what you did?" "Yes, sir. When I couldn't see, I listened. The mountain told me where they were." Morrison stepped forward. Sir, I was skeptical. Before the mission, I thought she was a liability. I was wrong. Chief Roar made 9 confirmed kills, destroyed 3 vehicles, saved 7 lives. She did it with skill and courage that I've never seen before. Brennan closed the journal, looked at Emma. I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. Morrison's recommending you for the Distinguished Service Cross. Between the two of us, we'll make sure you get recognized for what you did up there. Emma's throat tightened. Sir, I was just doing my job. No, Brennan's voice was firm. You did something that nobody thought possible. You proved that size doesn't determine capability. That doubt is just noise. That legacy matters. Your grandfather would be proud. Emma felt tears trying to form. She forced them back. Thank you, sir. Brennan stood. Get some rest. You've earned it. He handed the journal back to Morrison. Make sure that gets back to her safely. That's not just a journal, that's history. He walked out. Morrison stood there awkwardly, holding the journal like it might explode. Finally, he set it on the table beside her cot. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I judged you before you'd done anything. I was wrong. You were doing what you thought was right, sir. No, I was being an asshole. He looked at his team. They were all watching. We all were, we assumed, we mocked, we dismissed you, and you saved our lives anyway. Hound stepped forward, the big man who'd laughed the loudest, who'd made the jokes about step stools. He held out his hand. I'm sorry, ma'am, truly sorry. Emma took his hand. It swallowed hers completely. Apology accepted. One by one they came forward, each one offering an apology, each one acknowledging what she'd done, what she'd proven. When they were done, Morrison gestured to the door. We'll let you rest, but before we go, he pulled something from his pocket, a patch, Team Razorback, the unit insignia. We took a vote, unanimous. You're one of us now if you'll have us. Emma took the patch, stared at it. Team Razorback, a family built from blood and fire and shared trauma. They were offering her a place in that family. I'd be honored, sir. Morrison nodded. Then he did something unexpected. He stood at attention, rendered a crisp salute. The rest of the team followed. Saluting a warrant officer, showing respect that had nothing to do with rank and everything to do with what she'd earned. Emma tried to salute back, couldn't raise her arm, so she just nodded. Thank you, all of you. They filed out, left her alone with her thoughts, her pain, and her grandfather's journal. She opened it, flipped to the last page. Her grandfather's final words, whoever you are reading this, whatever you've learned, pass it on. Knowledge dies when we keep it to ourselves. Share what you know, teach who you can. That's how we survive, not through strength or size, but through wisdom passed down from one generation to the next. Emma closed the journal, held it against her chest, and for the first time since she'd stepped off that helicopter, she let herself cry. Not from pain, not from relief, but from gratitude, for a man she'd never met, who'd taught himself to shoot because nobody would teach him, who'd written his knowledge down so that decades later, a granddaughter he'd never know could use it to save lives. The legacy continues, always. 3 days later, Emma was cleared to fly home. Her arm was still in a sling. The doctors said it would be 6 months before she could shoot again. Maybe longer. But she'd be back. The mountain hadn't broken her, it had forged her. She walked across the tarmac toward the transport plane, her pack on her good shoulder, the TAC-50 in its case dragging behind her, and tucked carefully in her pocket her grandfather's journal. A voice called out behind her, Chief Roar. She turned. A young woman in ACU pattern was jogging toward her, corporal's stripes, maybe 22 years old, 5'1", built like Emma, small, compact. The kind of soldier who got told she was too small, too weak, not capable. The corporal stopped, saluted. Ma'am, I heard what you did in the Hindu Kush. I just wanted to say thank you for proving it's possible. Emma returned the salute with her good arm. What's your name, Corporal? Madison Hayes, ma'am. I'm trying out for sniper school next month. Everyone says I'm too small. that I won't make it. Emma smiled, reached into her pocket, pulled out a small piece of paper. She'd written something down this morning, knew she'd need it. This is my email. When you get to sniper school, contact me. I'll help you train. I'll teach you what my grandfather taught me. Hayes took the paper. Her eyes were shining. Thank you, ma'am. That means everything. You'll make it, Emma said. Because size doesn't matter. Determination does. Keep moving forward. Never let doubt become your identity. Hayes nodded, saluted again, ran back toward her unit. Emma watched her go, thought about the chain of knowledge, her grandfather teaching her teaching Hayes, Hayes teaching someone else, the wisdom spreading, growing, ensuring that no one else would have to fight alone against doubt and dismissal. She boarded the plane, found a seat, closed her eyes. 14 months later, Fort Benning, Georgia, sniper school. Emma stood at the front of classroom B wearing her dress uniform. The silver star sat beside her combat action badge, catching the light, drawing eyes. 12 students sat before her, 11 men and 1 woman. Corporal Madison Hayes, 5'1", arms crossed, expecting dismissal, expecting to be told she wasn't good enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't made for this. Emma set her grandfather's journal on the desk. I'm Chief Warrant Officer 3 Emma Rohr. Some of you might know me as Sparrow. Before we start the course, I want to tell you a story. She told them about the mountain, the dust storm, the impossible shots, clinical, factual, just math and outcomes. When she finished, a student raised his hand. Ma'am, how do you make 3,000-meter shots in a sandstorm? Emma wrote on the board, her grandfather's words. When the numbers fail, listen to what the mountain is telling you. My grandfather wrote that in 1959. He taught himself because nobody would teach him. Decades after he died, I learned from his words. I survived because of them, and now I'm going to teach them to you. Hayes raised her hand. Her voice was small, uncertain. Ma'am, I'm scared. I'm too small for this course. Emma looked at her, saw herself at every stage, every moment when someone said she couldn't, every door that closed in her face, every doubt that tried to become identity. Size isn't weakness, Emma said. It's specialization. You're built for crevices where big men can't fit, for positions nobody else can reach, for shots nobody else will take. She picked up the journal. This is 70 years old, written by Sandstorm Thomas Rohr, self-taught. When he died in 2003, I inherited it. I learned from a man I never met. He taught me. I'm teaching you. Someday you'll teach someone else. That's how we survive, not through size or strength, but through knowledge passed down. Hayes wiped her eyes. The legacy continues. Always, Emma said. Now everyone outside. We're learning the old way. No computers, just your eyes, your fingers, your brain, and what the mountain teaches you. The class filed out into Georgia heat. Emma followed, thinking about Morrison's recommendation letter, Brennan's weekly calls, her grandfather's words that had saved 7 lives. She thought about what the mountain had taught her, that the smallest person in the room could be the deadliest. That doubt was just noise. That math, when combined with will and legacy and wisdom, could bend reality itself. She thought about Hayes, about the next generation, about ensuring that no one else would have to prove what should never need proving. And she smiled, because the mountain had spoken, and she'd listened, and now she'd teach others to listen too. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Sometimes strength isn't measured in pounds or inches. It's measured in shots that shouldn't be possible, in lives saved despite doubt, in legacies passed from grandfather to granddaughter to soldier, in the quiet refusal to let size define destiny, in the mathematics of will, in the whisper of wind across a mountain that only some people can hear, in the knowledge that the deadliest things often come in the smallest packages. And sometimes the greatest lessons come from voices we never heard but whose words echo across generations, teaching us that limits are just invitations to prove them wrong.